Friends, today we're going to talk about something very intriguing. I'm actually going to get a lot of flack for that, but this is the 29th gift for today. We're talking about homosexuality. This is the talk of the world, especially in America. LGBT couples that are trying to get married. What does Judaism say about that? Before we start, and it's in this week's portion, we must understand as follows. The scroll, the Torah, in the end of the portion, enumerates a list of forbidden sexual relations. Obviously, incest, coming, a father or mother having relations with them, forbidden. But in the end of the list, we see that homosexuality is forbidden in the Torah. You shall not lie with a male in the way that you lie with a woman. We must understand and go on a journey understanding homosexuality in the Torah and how Judaism views it. So first we have to understand that homosexuality always existed in the world and has nothing to do with progress, has nothing to do with being enlightened. Homosexuality existed since the dawn of humanity. It existed in times of evil and existed in times of slavery. It existed in times of horrific things that happen in the world. Homosexuality does not have to do with being enlightened or with being progressive. It always existed. David Greenberg, and I'm taking a lot of the sources from an article that Dennis Prager wrote, and you can look it up, but David Greenberg, the author of the book, The Structure of Homosexuality, the book that's considered today the encyclopedia of homosexuality, writes as follows. Listen to this. In all history, except for a few cases, homosexuality between men was not considered as something of perversion. But there's one case that is different. Only one instance stood up and said homosexuality is something that is immoral. And that existed in Judaism. It's a very fundamental statement of David Greenberg. And he's the expert on homosexuality. We'll take Martha Nussbaum, from professor in the University of Brown. She says as follows. The people in ancient times really did not care about what kind of sexual preference you have. They did not even enter their mind. For them, sexual preference was like, what do you prefer to eat today? But it was more about, and I quote, sexuality in the ancient times was not understood as interaction, but as reaction. Reaction of doing something to someone. There was no interaction between people. There was only reaction. What I want to do to this person, it doesn't matter if it's a man, woman, child. That's how it was in the ancient times. And we understand that we know that in Greece it was like that. In Rome, in China, in France, in the Renaissance in Italy, poems have been written about it. Literature has been written about it. So it always existed. But here's the surprise. Homosexuality or homosexual marriage existed. And there is a great documentation, Williams, on homosexuality in Rome, page 280, says as follows, that in Rome, there were ancients that married their spouses. Neron, the Caesar Neron, also married. In the 12th century, knights married, and funny enough, one of them was married in a church in the 13th century, in Ireland, in Scotland. James Neal, also in his book, page 351, he says there's a great amount of documentation to marriage or homosexual marriage. So as we found out something very simple, homosexuality always existed. Marriage between the same sex always existed throughout history. But here comes Judaism. On that backdrop of ancient world and of the Middle Ages, any time you take in history, on that backdrop, comes Judaism, says as follows: you shall not sleep with a man just like you sleep with a woman. With one statement, they change radically the face of history. And old traditions have broken down. They stood up and says, no more. It's not about doing something to someone, but it's about interacting with someone. It challenged the world. It says in the beginning of Genesis that man was lonely, and he was not called human yet until he found someone different than him. God created someone different than him, and that was female. And God brought male and female together and created them to be called in Hebrew Ha-Adam, the human. Adam is not called Adam in Hebrew, Adam. Ha-Adam, the human, they are called only when they're joined together. So Judaism comes and says as follows: creating a humanity can come with interacting between the joint difference within people. So the Book of Books changed radically the notion regarding homosexuality. And it defines it as something that is moral, to want a joint effort between two people that are different, hence male and female. And Judaism affected Christianity, and Christianity affected Islam, and so on and so forth. But now, in this day and age, we find something new in the last 200 years. We take the old notion of homosexuality, which Judaism believes, by the way, that is genetical, that is a drive, that obviously, God forbid, it's not a disease. It's not a disease. It is an urge. It is genetically, people are born like that. But even when people are born like that, genetically, you can't call it something that is enlightened because it existed forever. And Judaism wants to heighten people. And they say, yes, you're born like that. But still, as a code of law, as a code of morals, I have to put a beacon and to tell you, you know what joint matrimony is? How do we create humanity? How do we sustain humanity? How do we heighten humanity? I must tell you, it is within a man and a woman. So Judaism brings a very, very combined, I would say, very, very a deep understanding. It does not tell us people do not have rights. It does not deal with rights at all. People that are born, people that have urges, people that have genetically geared or I should say tendency towards this, they have their rights. And we should keep their rights and fight for them. But on the other hand, Judaism is a religion and calling out to humanity to have obligations. And the obligations have to do with what is moral and what is just for humanity and the world. And how do we create humans here in the world? But one of the most fundamental articles that were written about this issue in this week's, in this year, was Jay Michelson in the website called The Beast. And he says as follows, and I quote, "We've passed the hurdle of gay marriage in America. It's done, it's a fact. But the real revolution did not come yet. It's still ahead of us. And that is the breakdown of the marriage, in the breakdown of the marriage, and how should we say it, the marriage institute. And he projects that the marriage institute will be something different, more open, including different couples. It will not be the same marriage structure that we have known. And that's the next revolution. What I understood from this article, it was very sad for me to hear this, is that it's not about rights. It's not about fighting for people because they have, they were born this way, genetically like this. No, it's not about that. And it's not about them being enlightened. It's about an old notion that found its way to our generation. And it's a practical thing that always existed, but is coded in something else. And that's what I'm sad about. It's not about people and about individuals. It's about movements and gay parades. And if you take the individual, yes, we should fight for it. But if we take society and the urge to break down marriage and to break down what makes humanity move forward, breeds, heightens itself, creates humans, because we must take individuals or entities that are different and see if they can join in holy matrimony to be together, that does not exist. And that's what Judaism calls out and says, I must object. I must protest. I must protest because it always existed, but I must stand as a beacon of light to show people it always existed, and I have always protested. So friends, if we can sum up, Judaism on one hand protects and says individuals are individuals, but as a society we must also protect marriage, we must protect society, we must protect the way of the world. And that's why today in this week's portion, as hard as it's to listen to it, the Torah tells us very simple: man cannot lie as he lies with a woman.